Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk to you about the book called Monster, written by Walter Dean Myers, and I'm going to tell you why you should teach it in your classroom and how you can teach it. So this book is a crime fiction novel, and it's written in the form of a screenplay and diary entries. It's about an African-American teenager who is 16, and his name is Steve Harmon, and he is on trial for murder. The incident that occurred was two men who went into a drugstore and robbed it and shot the owner. Apparently, Steve was on the lookout in the robbery and was identified as a potential suspect in the case. The book goes through each stage of the trial and each day that Steve sits in jail as a young 16-year-old. In the trial, they bring up a variety of different people, like witnesses who can tell their sides of the story. In the end, Steve is not found guilty, and his acquaintance named King goes to prison for the murder. Throughout the story, we see the horrors of what it's like to be in jail and the tough processes that people have to go through, whether they're guilty or not. This book is a tough text because it presents a lot of themes and topics that can be sensitive topics or triggering for some people. These topics include dehumanization, racism, violence, injustice, guilt, effects of peer pressure, finding identity, discrimination, and some others. So I believe that this book should be taught in schools because it touches on some very important topics. One of the big topics is racism, and that is something that we see right now in our country, especially. That is a huge issue, and it also gives us a look at how the American legal system functions and the realities of a trial. As readers, you get to see step by step how the trial works, and it's very interesting. There are also many lessons that come from this book, like a small choice has monstrous consequences. The story deals with identity, lies, betrayal, and other themes that can be important to touch on. And I think that they could potentially be relatable for some students. This book could be taught in an ELA classroom or a social studies classroom. And there are just very many benefits of teaching this book rather than negative ones for teaching it. So I would definitely recommend it. Some difficulties that students might face while reading this book is that it is definitely for a mature audience. The novel contains references to violence, drug use, sex, and explicit language. So there would need to be a discussion with the class, I think, before reading the book. Especially about how to handle these mature topics. And there could also be an issue with the book being racially offensive. However, this is a learning topic or point that you definitely can touch on as the class reads the book to show that there is racism and have a discussion for how to handle it and how people should really be treated and things like that. Some students might find the themes of the book, like the dehumanization, racism, guilt, prison, to be disturbing or triggering, so there might have to be some scaffolding as the class reads. And then another quick thing is that students might struggle with the amount of key characters in the book. There are a lot of different characters, and it's sometimes hard to keep them straight and keep track of them and understanding them. So that might be something difficult for students as well. Some scaffolding for teaching and discussing this book. The first thing I would do is some exo scaffolding. by establishing norms to make sure that everyone is on the same page in the classroom. I would have the students collaborate and come up with some norms that they think are important. And then I would explain that there is mature content in this novel and make sure that everyone understands how to handle the mature content. I would preface the class before reading by telling them that this is an open and inviting space, an open and inviting classroom and environment, and encourage students to talk to me or one another if they have something on their minds. I would recommend that everyone needs to be very respectful and kind and non-judgmental. In regards to the theme of this novel, I would scaffold along the way as we read it. There would definitely have to be a discussion on racism and guilt and injustice and discrimination. I think that the best way to talk about those topics is to just have an honest and sort of guided discussion about what it is and how we can fix it and what it is in the book. We can do partner discussions or small group discussions or whole class discussions. And students can do quick writes as well if they have something to say but they don't want to say it out loud. And then I can offer any support for students from myself, but also from counselors and online resources. Some specific activities would include the sticky note method. I think this method can be really effective, especially for tough topics. So I would provide sticky notes for students to use while they read the book, either while they're reading at home or in the classroom. And they can write down a question that they have that they want to ask later, or it can be an important idea or a comment that they want to make, or really anything that they want to say, and then along with the page number and some context of what part in the book that they're talking about, if that's necessary. And then after we read the chapter, the students can take the sticky notes from their books and submit the sticky notes anonymously to me, and then I can go through them and talk with the class about them. I think that it's important to have small group discussions as well. And also whole class discussions can be very beneficial as well. But I like the idea of doing small group discussions with 3 to 4 people, probably in a group, where students can really just like open up and collaborate and talk through things, and they can use like a guided discussion sheet provided to them if they would like. And then doing a whole class discussion as well, that involves the teacher leading part of it, and then if it goes somewhere, like it can be student-led. I think it's just kind of like up in the air with that, and it can be beneficial both ways. I think any form of discussion is very beneficial as long as it's done correctly. And then, of course, there are tons of online resources and visuals or videos or real-life examples or anything like that to add. For assessing students authentically for their understanding, a fun little assessment for students before they finish the book, before they read the ending, could be a little discussion paper on both sides of Steve being innocent and him being guilty. And they can provide reasons for each side and evidence for each reason. And I think that's a fun little activity because they can look at both sides and pull information from the book. And then another form of an authentic assessment for this book is having students kind of like trace the themes regarding like discrimination in the criminal justice system or deception or effects of peer pressure, any theme really that's in the book, and have them create a visual in regards to Steve in the book and making real life connections with that. So that's all I have. Thanks for listening.